Hello, and welcome back to Pass Me the Mic podcast. Today, we'll be discussing overcoming obstacles, the transition of first generation students into higher education. Let us first introduce ourselves. We are all current USC students in our Master's in Educational Counseling. My name is Elaine.
My name is Ashley.
And my name is Jeffery.
All of us here today are first generation students ourselves, and we really felt that we weren't prepared for the true experience of what higher education is. And we feel that a lot of it comes from not having that advantage of a parent that went to some college in the US, or also having a parent that entirely knows like the English language.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. For my experience, both of my parents are immigrants. They came from Guangzhou, China, which is the southern part of China. So they came from a farming community. So the best education they got was high school equivalent. So when they moved over here, they really came with nothing, no knowledge of America, no knowledge of the culture. So they were really looking for a new opportunity to give to their children, which I was one of those included. But they expected a lot. They really had high expectations. But if you look back at it, there wasn't a lot for me to like gain from. You know, they weren't college educated even in China, so uh, for them, they really didn't know what was going to work or not. Besides, you know, saying work hard.
As for me, I am the first in my family, of course, to go to college. My parents both came here from Mexico. And so for me, my experience kind of started since I was younger because I did come from a single parent, low income background. And so the thing with first gen is a lot of times they are um, from low income families, and they are usually people of color. And so having just different identities on top of each other and different obstacles makes it even harder in higher ed. So from my experience, I just had really a lot of struggles with my transition into higher ed. And as I'm now in this program, I've been able to identify those barriers that I wasn't able to identify before.
Yeah, I can definitely understand that as well. I'm also a daughter of immigrants. Both of my parents came here to this country, and I am the youngest child, so I do have that privilege of getting at least a little bit of more knowledge from like my older siblings. But even then, even though I am the youngest, both of my siblings didn't complete college or didn't go to college. So all of like that responsibility has fallen down on me as the youngest. So there's just that expectation to excel, but we're not really having all of the resources and lacking a sense of direction because that support isn't there.
I'd say something I'd want to share that really drew me to this topic was throughout this program, I didn't realize first generation was population that I wanted to focus on, but as I've been given or I've been assigned assignments, I noticed I've been drawn to that population, and possibly because that was my experience, and I feel that I can relate to first generation students a lot. But while I was doing some research, I was looking at the different statistics of first generation students of color's graduation rates compared to non first generation white students specifically. And so the National Center for Education Statistics is based on a 6-year graduation rate. And for first generations to earn their bachelor's degree from a four-year university, first generation students of color, their percentage was 40% compared to white non-first generation was 64. So that is definitely a significant difference. And that's more of a national percentage. I also looked at the California specifically since we do live in California and I was really interested in that. And so it does get better. First generation students of colors earn their bachelor's degree approximately 50% of the time. However, of course, non-first generation students were still at the 64 range. And so For me, it's just really been an interest of seeing what has really been the barriers for first generation students. I mean, based on my experience, I think it was a lot of just lack of direction. And because I also started at a community college, I think it was pretty hard to be motivated, besides the fact that I was the oldest in my family, so I had to be like a role model for my younger siblings. Besides that, I feel like it could definitely be hard to motivate yourself, and especially in a community college because they have so many students and it's structured to an extent, I believe, because many people can go there and, if they need one class or I'm an advisor now, and a lot of my students just go and take summer classes there and then transfer them back to their university. So anyone can really go there, and that's great. But I think when it comes to students who really need support, sometimes it can be very difficult. And that's just from my experience. I felt like there was lack of direction for me. And so I had to do it all on my own.
I think what comes with that is definitely those specific like hidden curriculums that aren't really shown to us because of like our backgrounds. And then also just like the intersectionality of a lot of our identities. Unfortunately, a lot of first generation students do carry a lot of marginalized identities with them, such as race, socioeconomic status, gender, age. But like Ashley said, I feel like advisors do really play like a vital role in helping first generation college students feel safe and secure in their transition to college. And I feel like that's also like a reason why I want to be an advisor, because I was provided like that safe space transitioning from high school to undergrad. And I want to be like that same type of support.
Yeah, I definitely relate to both Ashley and Elaine on their motivations of wanting to be, in the field of higher ed. Definitely for me, coming from, a low income family as myself, and one of the few handful in my family to go to college, right? So some of the academic challenges were kind of expectations in my lived experience, right? So even though my parents at the time when I went to college, they never heard of like Amy Chow. Amy Chow is famous for writing the book Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. And what she writes in it is like really a like authoritarian type of style parenting style. So but some of the things she said were things that my parents said to me, especially my mother. Whereas if I didn't do well in school, right? She'll call me garbage, for example, or don't come home if I didn't do well in school, right? So these stereotypes, that memes that we see, sometimes, they have some truth behind them. And I know how Ashley says she started as a CC. I also started at a community college as well, and it was not taken well for my family. It was a very unpopular decision. A lot of my family members were disappointed. They expected me to go to UC, and there's this hierarchy in the Asian communities where, unfortunately, it's kind of like UCs are up on the upper tier, Cal State are under UCs and don't even bother to go to a community college, right? Now they're aware of like NYU and Harvard and Stanford, but even the UCs themselves, they had a hierarchy. You see Berkeley and LA are at the top. Uh, so that was really my lived experience, right? They really wanted me to achieve these high marks with very little help. They didn't know about tutoring, or they didn't know about like extracurricular. They just thought that if I hit the books, I should gain this knowledge in my head, right? Without any assistance, right? So, and I think that's a one big advantage and disadvantage where, some of these Asian parents who read Amy Child's book and they tried to implement her philosophy to their own parenting style don't realize that Amy Child, you know, she herself was educated. She was an Asian born American, whereas we see all these first generation immigrants applying this philosophy that it's already kind of misaligned in a way because they themselves aren't educated in that
Um,
sense.
that definitely factored into, like, my own decision on where to go, for my bachelor's degree. Um, I got into all of, like, the Cal States that I applied to, but for the UCs, I only got into UC Santa Barbara, and then I actually did get into Pepperdine as well for a private. Um, However, Pepperdine, it was too expensive, and so because of, like, my socioeconomic status, I couldn't afford to go there, so it was between, like, the Cal States that I had got accepted into, and then the UC, Santa Barbara. I ultimately chose UC Santa Barbara because it was a UC. Looking back, I may not have made the same decision if that hierarchy in my mind wasn't as prevalent. I had a conversation with one of my professors over the winter break, and it kind of just dawned on me that it was such a good experience, and I feel like I took away from, like, my accomplishment of getting into those Cal States, because of the hierarchy. I didn't see it as an accomplishment. I saw it as just like, "Oh, okay." I viewed them as safeties rather than reaches or, goal schools. So I definitely loved my experience at UC Santa Barbara, but I feel like I definitely maybe missed out on other experiences that I could have had if I looked into maybe a university that was more hands-on, which Cal States are known for being more hands-on rather than UCs, which are more research-based. I was never into research, so a lot of like my classes in my psychology major were based on research, and I'm here now in an education program, so I was more interested in like the way like our mind works, not really like using psychology in order to go into research. So like once I got there into UC Santa Barbara, it was just like, okay, well I'm here, and I also not only made that decision, but I also ended up moving 100 miles away from home as an 18-year-old. Knowing no one in a new city, I moved from the San Fernando Valley area to Santa Barbara. And it was really just a drastic change because I was so used to like this metropolitan area. And I moved to this beach town where, like, 5 steps away from my dorm is the beach, and luckily, I had a great experience. I have to shout out the Educational Opportunity Program because they really made my experience like worthwhile. But it was a lot. And unfortunately, my parents didn't really understand that because, I mean, like looking back on it, how could they, you know? They didn't have that experience. My both of my parents only went up to elementary school. So from the time that I went to college and the time that they were in school, it was so far apart that it was kind of just like on me. And in that, I think I was just really afraid to ask for help as well, because then it kind of just seemed like, oh, then you don't belong here because you're asking for help. Like it's that imposter syndrome that really like stayed in me for quite a bit because I felt like everyone knew what they were doing. And I was just like here in this new environment and I didn't really know what to do. I kind of just had to figure it all by myself. Google was my best friend. Um, because I wouldn't go to advising. I would talk to my friends, but it was just like on a surface level. So it's just like that notion of asking for help is so limited and not really reached out enough.
I think you make a good point, Elaine, about also just when you were choosing your college. Because for me, I decided to go to a community college very last minute, and I just went wherever my friends went. And when I was thinking about transferring, I only applied to one school and went there. I didn't really consider other options or the, location of the school, what majors were the best, things like that, especially in regard to like what I wanted to do, which I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just like felt that I needed to choose something because also the limited time. For community college, they tell you do 2 years and then go to a Cal State or go to a UC or just transfer anywhere. And so for me, because I was also just like working full time, I had a lot of things that I was doing, and I felt like I didn't have guidance or just knowledge of how to transfer to different types of universities. I only applied to CSUN. Most likely, I knew I had a pretty good GPA, so I would most likely get in and transfer there. And so I felt like that really limited me because I could have gone, not that CSUN is not a good school. I think it's a great school and I love that college. And I was able to go there for free for all the, the rest of my college education. So I think it is a great school. However, for me personally, I feel like I didn't try my best because I felt like I was also just rushed and needing to transfer, to just go complete your degree and then transfer. And also just lack of knowledge of other colleges, even Cal State LA, UCLA, USC, as you have better opportunity as a transfer student. But those are things I didn't even consider. I kind of just stayed where I was very much aware of because I am from the the San Fernando Valley, I mean, and because I went to the high school right next to Cal State Northridge. So I stayed very local. I kind of stayed where I was familiar. And though I think that's great, I also think it's good for us to look into different opportunities. But sometimes that's hard when you don't have anyone and you're also like working and doing just your life. And so I did like that you mentioned that point because I think it is important to share the different opportunities available to all students, which leads me to the point of also going back to the structure of the community college, because I read an article and it had said like community colleges have the largest population of first generation students. And so because of that, I definitely think that structure should be adjusted. I know it can be really hard because anyone can go there for different types of things. People only need to go for one class, but advisors and counselors there have a responsibility of really helping the students that they meet with. I didn't have a good experience with my counselor, and so I feel like that also is what led me to really just limit myself and like, okay, I need to figure out on my own, so I'm gonna do exactly what I know. I know this college is 5 minutes from my house, so I'm gonna transfer there. And so it's really important for us now, as we go into the field, remembering our experiences to be able to apply them when we work, whether it is if it's a community college or 4 year, wherever it is, just kind of reminding ourselves of these experiences and how much they have an impact on students.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to both Ashley and Elaine's perspective. I also transferred away from my local community. I went from Pasadena City College all the way to Sacramento State, and also I really struggled on asking help as well. And and part of why I struggled so much on asking help was, I felt like as a Asian American, sometimes you have a lot of like expectations, and a lot of people have like perceptions, right? Asians are good at math, for example, and there's this myth of a model minority, for example, and I remember reading a quote from Mimoikin McCormick. She's a clinical director of the adult residential service at Rushford. This is a quote that she said: "This had been haunting us for some time. It profiled us as a racial success story as early as the 1960s." And what she means by that is this model minority myth. Model minority myth places really unrealistic expectations on Asian Americans or Asians in general, and striving that they are better than other minorities, and we come from really the same equal footing. We come in with the same disadvantages and opportunities, and so because of like this perception of like um, I should know better. I should know this stuff. I never really went to ask for my counselors for help. I think I went one time and I got really poor experience, just like Ashley. And after that, I was like, I'm just going to try to figure it out on my own. And I was in a really big rush to kind of get done because by the time I was ready to transfer out of Pasadena City College, I've had already been there for like 4 years. I was already 22 years old. My classmates in 2008 were already graduating by the time I transferred. And so I transferred to Sacramento State as a 24-year-old because it took me even longer to figure out what I want to do. Not 24, sorry, 22. And I took me another 4 years to graduate from Sac State. So I was eight. It took me 8 years to finish my undergraduate, right? So, uh, to my family, I was kind of like a walking failure, and I think part of it is like that really affected like my self worth. It made me really feel like that imposter syndrome, like I don't belong here. I never did belong here. Uh, and I think that's why I really struggled going to when I got accepted to USC. I had massive imposter syndrome because I was coming in as someone who took like 8 years to complete his undergraduate and took a 5 year gap before enrolling into their master's program. So it was, um, you know, I still feel that expectation and I still feel the pressure. But I think part of it is like that lived experience, like really pushes me to like be an advocate for first generation students because I just know like the unrealistic expectations that are placed upon them, whether or not it's through their family or even through themselves.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the times, I think people forget that imposter syndrome can really affect people at any like stage. It's like specifically like in college students, like it can be like from their first semester of community college, of at a 4-year university, to even like beyond graduation when they're like in their professional career. And it's definitely more prevalent and notable among women and minority groups in higher education. So I think it's like really like up to us in order to combat that. I feel like as future counselors and really use like our lived experiences that, we were able to do it. There's gonna be challenges, but it's using like that motivational interviewing to really support that student as they progress in their academic journey.
Yeah, as an advisor now, I've been trying to simply do the best I can while working with students. I think for me, because I work in a predominantly white university and college enrollment has been declining. And for example, we're really having a hard time enrolling students because of financial aid. They're not getting any aid at all. And so that's also another issue that I think it's impacts a lot of first generation students of color because also I understand Pepperdine is a private school and it is really expensive school, but also the aid should be able to help students as much as possible. And that's just at this point, it's just not happening. And so when that happens, our population, and me just speaking from Pepperdine, is going to be specific students who can really afford to go and pay $2,000 per unit for 4 years. And so that is just going to be another challenge that is now coming up because there isn't any funding for students to go to college. And with all these also FAFSA changes, I know that's going to be a big struggle for the upcoming college students. And so I think that's also just a barrier that we want to discuss and see, in what ways possible can we help to make changes on this, especially again for first gen students, because trying to understand, first of all, the FAFSA or the California Dream Act. And so, because for me, I was very grateful to have received aid throughout all my time in college, from community college to Cal State. I was able to cover everything. And so I didn't have to take out any loans or things like that. I do now for graduate school. And so I see, all these options that I've never seen before, and I don't even understand. I'm always even asking for help now. Like, what is this? What does this loan mean? I don't know which one to get. And so I can imagine how it was for a first generation student at 18 trying to figure out, what is appropriate for them to get to start their first semester of college.
Yeah, I definitely see a lot of those cases right now at Los Angeles City College. Currently doing an internship at their Dream Resource Center. So we mostly work with undocumented students. But like I personally do the FAFSA application, and it was actually pretty simple this time around. Like I didn't have to put in any financial information. However, working on like the California Dream Act with these students, it hasn't been as simple for them. And a lot of the times, these undocumented students are also first generation, not only first generation college students, but first generation in this country. So navigating this entire application, and mind you, there's not even translations of the application. It is completely in English. So navigating this application in order to receive financial aid, and even then, there's doubts of whether they'll be able to receive aid and not be persecuted after because of public charge. So fortunately, receiving state aid doesn't affect public charge. Um, but it's still that fear that's there. And also just understanding like what they're asking of you. Like most of them don't know what a pension is. They don't have investments, they don't have businesses. So even though, a lot of the times the numbers are zero, it's kind of like, am I supposed to be getting like this type of money? It kind of like even like when I'm going through it, it's like I can see them like being a little bit confused as to like what these things are. And I was definitely confused, like doing the FAFSA application for the first time as a 17-year-old. I didn't know what these things were. My dad has his own business, so we had to like do these other forms like the Schedule C and I don't know even what. So it was going through those forms by myself, and if I had any questions, I couldn't really ask my dad because it was like, "Well, I don't know, it's on the paper," you know? And then, like Ashley said, like, but then when you finally get, like, that financial aid package, it's like, we're expected to understand, like, everything that is on there, like, those terminologies, when it's, like, our first time actually seeing them. Like, I had no idea what subsidized or unsubsidized was, once again, Google. And then also like the housing costs in there as well. It is so expensive to live where you go to school. Um, and if a student, is supposed to have like these high expectations of themselves and wants to go to like a UC, most of the time UC students do decide to move to where they'd go to school. I did. And there comes moving costs as well as living costs while you're over there. I had to support myself um, my junior year and my senior year of college. And in that, it's not only being a full time student, but also working while you're doing it. So it's really a lot on top of classes, but we're expected to do it as first generation students and do it well, which is the hard part.
Yeah, Elaine, I have a question for all of you guys. And this is kind of like my experience was when I went to college all the way in Sacramento, right? I was still expected to still be the translator for my family, right? I still had these duties I had to do away from home, as I was attending, 300 plus miles away. I still had to like redocument, translate for them. So it's like having multiple jobs, wearing multiple hats, especially being a first generation child. So I'm wondering if any of you guys also had the same like expectations and burden that I had to do while I was going through my undergraduate.
That's a great question, Jeffrey. And I went again to Cal State Northridge. I'm from the Valley, so I have always lived near Northridge. So I have basically still remained home since just forever. It's still been that time. So for me, my experience is like that I was already doing it. So it just kind of continued, even though I was going to college and, going to school for time, also doing working my senior year of college. I had two jobs and I had to buy everything myself. So I bought my own laptop. I bought I I also bought my car, my first car, and then I had to get another one. So ever since for me, since I turned 18, I just started doing everything myself. I think now, as I'm older, I take on more for my family in regards to we lived in an apartment pretty much all our lives, and then we moved to a house probably about 4 years ago. So like around COVID time, thankfully. And so with that, I took responsibility of a lot of things, such as the bills, kind of just navigating everything. And I think because I'm the oldest, that role is placed on me and I'm able to handle it compared to like maybe my siblings. I mean, I have one brother who is 3 years younger than me. So, I mean, that's still definitely a good age to be able to do, things such as pay bills and stuff like that. But for me, I think it just has always been that way and will always be that way until I move out. And maybe even while I move out, I'm sure my family will continue to ask me. And that's just because they they think I know how to do everything. And I think as a first gen, because you're doing everything that they weren't able to do, then they think that you know everything or are able to handle everything. So I think that's a big thing. And so for me, again, it's been constant since I was younger. I was always helping my mom with any financial aid that I got and helping her and my family in any way possible. So I kind of just already had that responsibility and it kind of just stuck with me. If I moved, I don't know, I feel like similar to you, it could have stuck because, as a first gen, our families are still also learning all these different things as that are coming up. And so that was my experience. And I am, motivating my siblings to go to college and to learn how to do the things that I did just because it'll benefit them. I don't mind that they ask me questions, but I do want them to also learn how to do things. And so, but I think there is just that like stigma on like first generation. And, for me, it's like oldest, being the oldest, where you know everything, you've done everything, you're going to keep doing everything. And it can be challenging at times, but at this age for me, I've just learned to accept it. And it is what it is. And I love my family. I will always help them in every way possible. And I just believe within me and my family that I know that I'm able to handle it. And maybe if someone else was doing it, they wouldn't be able to do it just based on my experience as a first gen and being the oldest.
Yeah, I think I have a different experience, being the youngest myself. My siblings are 10 plus years older than me. So I say like by the time I gained consciousness, they were both already out of the house. So I really kind of was thrown into that role because there really was no one else to do it at that point. Um, I think in like Latin cultures, you don't really leave the house unless you are of child or you get married. So both of my siblings, had their children, so they left the house. So none of the familial responsibilities fall on them anymore. It was now on me as the only child left in the house. So I really did feel parentified from like a young age because of that. So I was like the family translator. I remember multiple times, government, don't come after me, me personating my mother on the phone because she couldn't speak English. She'd tell me what to say in Spanish and then I would say it. And it really just, it was an interesting experience because it still continued when I moved out for college. And I think it continued for me because, well, one, they had no one else to do it for them. But also, I didn't leave the home because I had a child or I got married. I left to go to school, which is, I feel like it's not really common, or at least they didn't really understand like that aspect of like, I'm actually like moving out. Um, I my dad really wanted me to go to Cal State Northridge. That is my homeschool as well. And he even bribed me, and he told me like, "Oh, I'll get you a car if you stay." Well, great opportunity. I wanted to set my sights a little bit higher. Again, hierarchy, but it is what happened. And even while I was 100 miles away, I still translated for them. I still to this day have a bookmark on my browser of bills, all of the bills that I would have to pay for my parents, whether it was the gas bill, water bill, credit card bills. And I really held that role until I ended up cutting contact with my parents. There was a situation that happened my senior year of undergrad where I cut off contact with my parents and we did not speak from October 2022 until June 2023. Um, Fortunately for them, at that time, my sister was living with them. So because I was no longer there or available to them as the translator, as the bill payer, as the do everything for them, it kind of fell on my sister because she was the one who was there. Um, I now have a good relationship with them again. But I think even though, it was a difficult time where I was um separated from them, I think it did really benefit me because they were able to see the benefits of me moving away, of me trying to be this better person because ultimately they came to this country to give my me and my siblings a better life. Um, and I am living proof of that, I say. I do value, those responsibilities that were placed on me, but it was also, responsibilities that a 7-year-old child shouldn't have to go through. And I feel like oftentimes as first generation students, we are also second generation immigrants, where our parents immigrated to this country and we're the US citizens. So because we're the citizens, we should already know everything because we're born into this country. But honestly, that's not the case, so the burden did fall on me, unfortunately. You know, I'm I'm so grateful for my parents for giving me like those opportunities, because they they did as much as they could. They really did. They didn't have as many resources, as someone who did go to college, but the support that was there, my I know my mom's love language is giving gifts because whenever I was there studying until like 12 in the morning, she would always come with a bowl of fruit to do like a little pick me up. So while that community cultural capital wasn't there, like that specific navigational capital, there was still support there, and that ultimately was what helped me set my sights on something bigger than me.
Thank you for sharing all that, both of you. What incredible journeys that you guys both had to navigate through. Uh, it's kind of interesting because we have someone like you, Elaine, who's the youngest, and someone Ashley who's the oldest, and me, I'm actually the middle child. So uh, for up to 13, probably 15 years of my life, my older brother had taken on that mantle of being the sole translator and organizer on everything that my parents did. But when he moved to college, that burden, that responsibility fell onto me, and it's really been in my hands since then. Because they really didn't want to burden my brother anymore, and so I guess they kind of like, oh, Jeff seems like he can handle it. So even now, I still take care of a lot of the things now, and now I'm kind of like the de facto representative of my family. I'm the one that they asked me to attend formal greetings as the family member, as a representative of like the Lee family of all the brothers. Um, there's one thing I kind of want to touch into, and that's actually the expectations in a way, kind of like how Ashley, being the oldest, do you feel like your siblings have been unfortunately like compared to you? Because I know for my lived experience, I've been compared to my older brother and my cousin who both went to UCs. And even for you, Elaine, were you expected to follow in a higher footsteps than your to your other siblings before you?
Jeffrey, you have some really good questions. So, well, from my perspective, I don't think my younger siblings were compared to me too often, though my sister says that I'm my mom's favorite. And though she says that, I think she says that for a reason because besides my accomplishments, I again with this whole like oldest, sibling daughter role, I feel like it has such a huge impact on how I am towards my family, especially my mom. And so I really think that's where the comparison comes. I think because, and I really speak mostly for my sister. I feel like we're the ones who have the most conversations about kind of like comparisons. And I think because also maybe boys don't care as much in regards to like my brother being compared to me. Which I'm sure he has felt compared to me, but we don't have that discussion compared to like me and my sister do because we're girls and we just talk that way to each other. So my sister says she does feel that she's been compared to me, but again, I think it's more just on the role that I have overall. My mom has told me that my sister does say that she wants to be like me and you know, my college experience and the opportunities that I've had and taken and just how I am as a person. And so far, I would say it has been maybe more of like a motivation, which is what I want their view of me to be. I don't want them to compare themselves to me because everyone has a different experience. We grew up completely differently because she's now just a freshman in college. I've already graduated college and now I'm doing this master's degree. But we're completely different in the way that we grew up. And so I think it's just for my family and my younger siblings. I think it's more of just like, my older sister did this so that, that just means that, maybe I could also do this. She can help me through this. And so I think it's been definitely more of a positive experience for my siblings, though sometimes we fight and we do talk about education and I tell them, "Well, I'm completing a master's degree. You don't even have your bachelor's degree yet." And it's more of, just hard motivation for them. I really am not ever trying to hurt their feelings and they know I'm not. It's more like when we have arguments. I always tell them, please use me as a resource. My sister's always testing me questions like, what classes do I enroll in? Even though she gives me no background knowledge of what she's taken already, nothing. She just says, what do I enroll in? And I just go with that. I'll be like, let me try to look at every text you sent me before, And so thankfully I do think it's been a positive experience. I do share like my accomplishments. Last semester I did really well my first semester and it was really challenging for me while working, full time. And I've thought about going part-time because it was really a struggle. And I shared this with the professors before and it was just hard. So I do share that with them more of like right now you guys have a lot of free time, like really take advantage of different things because again, when I was in college, it was completely different for now how my younger siblings who are just starting college are going through. So I think just, positive experience, thankfully, and I hope to continue that positive experience for them and to continue to guide them through their college experiences.
For me personally, I don't think the comparison really came from, like, my parents or my siblings. It kinda really just came from, like, within me, where I knew, like, the position that I was born in or that I grew up in, and I obviously saw, those struggles that my siblings went through and how it affected my parents. So it was really just like that intrinsic motivation to do better. My brother, he barely graduated from high school, and my sister dropped out of college. So I would always tell my parents, I'm going to be the one who's going to graduate from undergrad. They were always like, "We'll see it when you do it." But I ultimately did do it. It has been the greatest accomplishment of my life. Um, and I hope that not for my nieces and my nephews to compare themselves to me, but like as you said, to see me as like that role model to them, that resource because I've now built that knowledge. I have gone through those experiences and I know what it's like, to navigate college. As a Latina, as a first generation student, because ultimately my nieces and my nephews will be first generation. Um, if I have children, they won't be. But I will have those similar experiences that my nieces and my nephews will have. So yeah, I do think it was mostly on me. So it's still just combating like those comparisons and also like challenging my own thoughts too, because I think because I'm more, like, extrinsically motivated to do better for, like, my parents, I don't really know, like, what my own motivation is, outside of that. So it's really just understanding, like, why I really wanna do this, and I think I really understood that I just have, like, that passion for helping. Um, I originally wanted to go into the medical field, and it didn't work out for me, but I think I'm definitely in the right career path where I can help students with that now community cultural capital that I have.
Wrap up our podcast. I have one final question for all of us, and I'll answer first. What advice would you give yourself? Give your freshman 18-year-old self words of encouragement, on their journey to move forward, in their college experience. And I think for me, it's really to believe in yourself, really ask for help. I was never very good at asking for help, and it's okay to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness and that you don't know. It's kind of like seeing a therapist. You're a stronger person by understanding and acknowledging that there's some gaps that you need some help with. So definitely for me, my 18-year self, I would have told myself that it's perfectly fine to ask for help, and it still means that you are very capable of who you are as a person.
I think I would tell my 18-year-old self to really just enjoy the experience, take it all in, because it's gonna fly by, and don't really focus too much on like those expectations of you, but rather really pursue and go for like what you are passionate about and build support, with your friends. They're there for you. They did go through those same experiences as you. So really just rely on them for that support and ask for help. Definitely ask for help. I didn't do it enough. Um, but those resources are there for me, for you to grab, you pay tuition, you deserve to use those resources. So do it.
I would have to say the exact same words as Elaine. For me, I just feel again like I wanted to graduate and go to college and do everything, but I feel like I didn't enjoy the experience. Like I was, one of those people that would go to college, go to class, and then like go to work and then go home. And it wasn't really until like my senior year that I decided to join a few different clubs and did some like extracurricular things and decided to meet more people again because I'm such a shy person. I didn't take advantage of like the different programs that were available to like maybe like first gen that I am now aware of. I think just because now working in this field, I learned about just so many different opportunities that I just didn't know about. And it sucks to think about how I, went through college and wasn't able to really get the experience. just because I was first gen, I lacked so much knowledge about college, and so I would probably just advise myself to really explore, enjoy college. It definitely is one of the best experiences, and it's really what you make out of it. And I definitely just would have wish I would have done more. But also that's just kind of, the experience sometimes that first generation students face.
Thank you so much. I really want to thank everyone who was in this panel to really talk about their experiences and really shared about their transition to higher ed. Uh, and I hope you enjoyed what we had to share today. My name's Jeffrey.
My name is Ashley.
And my name's Elaine. Thank you so much for listening.